I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine pulling out your credit card to cover a nearly $5,000 bill, one you didn't have to pay, one nobody even asked you to pay. You did it because you wanted your family to have a beautiful holiday together. You wanted Easter Sunday to feel special, with good food, laughter, and memories. Now imagine, after all of that, being told, "Sorry, there's no room at the adult table. You'll have to sit with the kids." That was me. My name's Ethan Cole, and this is the story of how my family learned a lesson they didn't see coming. It was Easter morning, and I remember walking into the hall I had quietly rented. The place looked incredible. Rows of pastel flowers lined the tables, silverware sparkled, and there was enough food to feed an army. People would think my parents had spared no expense, or maybe that my older brother Noah had picked up the tab because he had the biggest salary. Nobody suspected it was me. That's how I wanted it. I didn't need the spotlight. I just wanted everyone to be happy. But here's the funny thing about families. They can love you deeply and still fail to see who you really are. I'm the youngest. Always have been. Always will be in their eyes. Noah's 33, a financial advisor with the kind of confidence that makes him the center of attention in any room. Claire, my younger sister, is 25 and still in grad school, but she knows how to slide into conversations and be noticed. Me? At 28, I've always been the quiet one, the one people forget to ask questions about, the one who's still somehow treated like a boy no matter what I've accomplished. That morning, the moment that set everything in motion happened faster than I expected. We all walked into the hall together. The adult table stretched across the center, perfectly set for 10. Then there was the kids' table, a smaller one tucked into the corner with bright plastic cups, paper napkins, and little bunny decorations. It looked cute, but it wasn't where I pictured myself sitting on a holiday I had single-handedly bankrolled. Mom, Margaret, pointed at the kids' table without hesitation. "Ethan, honey, can you just sit over there with the little ones for now? We're all packed in at this table." No hesitation, no second thought, just boom, like I didn't belong. Now, if you've ever been put in a spot like that, you know the burn that creeps up your neck, that wave of embarrassment you feel even though you try not to show it. I looked at the main table. Dad, Noah, Claire, Grandpa Henry, all sliding into their seats like royalty, and I caught Noah smirking. "Well, at least Ethan's with his peers," he laughed, loud enough for the whole table to hear. Everyone chuckled. Everyone except me. I forced a smile, nodded like it didn't sting, and sat down at the kids' table. Around me, little cousins were already fighting over who got the purple jelly beans and who spilled juice on their plate. One of them shouted, "Ethan, can you open this for me?" and handed me a Capri Sun. I poked the straw in, trying to laugh it off, but deep down it hurt. Because here's what none of them knew. I wasn't just another guest at that party. I was the reason it was even happening. The hall, the food, the decorations, the endless trays of ham and scalloped potatoes, it was all me, paid in full. My parents thought maybe Noah had chipped in, or maybe the venue had been sponsored through Dad's connections at church. The truth was, I had saved for months. I had called every caterer, negotiated prices, and put down the deposit. And while they all saw me as the baby brother, I was the one carrying the weight of the entire holiday. I sat there at the kids' table, pretending to laugh, pretending it didn't matter. But in my chest, I could feel that mix of humiliation and pride colliding. I told myself to keep quiet, to let the day play out, to just be grateful my family was together. But I couldn't shake the thought. One way or another, they were going to find out who had really made this Easter possible. And when they did, well, let's just say the lesson hit harder than I ever imagined. By the time everyone had taken their seats, the hall was buzzing like a beehive. The clinking of silverware, bursts of laughter, and the smell of roasted ham mixed with buttery rolls filled the air. From the outside, you'd think this was the picture of a perfect family holiday. But for me, sitting at the corner table surrounded by kids fighting over chocolate bunnies, it felt like something else entirely. I tried to take it in, really look at what I had pulled together. The pastel-colored linens draped across the tables, the flower arrangements in mason jars, the carefully folded napkins shaped like little rabbits. It looked effortless, like it had all just appeared. But I remembered the late nights scrolling through rental catalogs, the back-and-forth emails with the caterer, the exact moment I swiped my card for the deposit. All those tiny decisions, invisible to everyone else, had built this perfect Easter Sunday. And yet here I was, pushed off to the side. The adult table wasn't just bigger, it was the throne room. My dad, Thomas, sat at the head, carving into the ham like he was hosting royalty. He's the kind of man who believes traditions should never change, especially who sits where. To him, Noah was the golden boy, the heir apparent. Claire, being the only daughter, had a special place too. Grandpa Henry, with his booming laugh and old-school charm, sat proudly near the middle, telling stories to anyone who would listen. Then there was Noah. If I had $1 for every time someone compared me to him, I probably could have paid for this Easter twice over. At 33, he's got the big salary, the sharp suit, the kind of presence that makes people lean in when he speaks. He cracked jokes at the table, his voice carrying across the hall, pulling everyone into his orbit. Meanwhile, I was at the kids' table, wedged between my 7-year-old cousin Lucy and 9-year-old Brandon, who were locked in a heated debate about who could eat more Peeps marshmallows without getting sick. "Ethan, want to bet?" Brandon asked, grinning with marshmallow dust all over his lips. I smiled, shaking my head. "I think I'll sit this one out, buddy." Lucy tugged on my sleeve. "Can you cut my ham? Mom says you're good at cutting." I picked up her plate, carefully slicing the ham into tiny bites. It felt ironic. Here I was, slicing food for kids when just hours earlier I had written the check that made sure every plate in this hall was filled. From the corner of my eye, I saw Noah lean back in his chair at the main table, glass of wine in hand. "Man, this place is nice," he said loudly, like he was the one who had set it up. "Mom, Dad, you really went all out this year." Mom laughed, brushing a stray curl from her face. "Well, we wanted it to be special." Special. That was the word she used. I bit my tongue, chewing on a piece of bread as I looked around. Nobody even thought to ask who made special possible. It's not that I wanted credit, not really. I didn't need them to throw me a parade or toast in my honor. But being dismissed so casually, being sat at the kids' table like I hadn't earned a place with the adults, cut deeper than I expected. I thought about all the times growing up when I was told, "You're still too young," or "Let your brother handle it." Even now, at 28, it was like I hadn't graduated from the role of the youngest child. No matter what I did, I was the background character in my own family story. The hardest part was that I loved them. Every single one of them. I loved that Mom fussed over the table settings, that Dad carved the ham with such pride that Claire leaned in to laugh at Noah's stories, and that Grandpa Henry told the same joke about the Easter bunny every single year. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted them to see me, not as the baby brother, not as the quiet one, but as the man who had stepped up when nobody else did. I leaned back in my chair, watching the two tables like they were two separate worlds. On one side, the adults clinking glasses, laughing about politics, careers, and vacations. On the other, the kids smearing chocolate on their faces, flicking jelly beans across the table, shouting over each other. And there I was, caught in the middle, too old for one table, too invisible for the other. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to say a word. Not a hint, not a brag, not even a passive-aggressive comment. I was going to sit there, eat my ham, and wait. Because the truth always has a way of showing up, even when you don't announce it. And when it did, it was going to change everything. Dinner had barely started when the real sting began to set in. At first, I thought maybe I could shrug it off, just enjoy the food, laugh with the kids, and let the day pass. But the longer I sat at that little corner table, the clearer it became. I wasn't just out of place. I was invisible. The adult table glowed like a spotlight. Crystal glasses clinked, plates piled high with steaming food, and conversations rolled like waves. My dad, Thomas, carved into the glazed ham with that same precision he used to cut his fishing lines. He raised his voice just enough to command the table. "So, Noah," Dad said, his tone proud, "how's the firm treating you these days? Closing any big deals lately?" Noah grinned, leaning back in his chair like he was at a boardroom table instead of Easter dinner. "Biggest quarter yet. I signed a client last month that brought in more than our entire year 2 years ago. Boss is already talking about a promotion." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom beamed. Claire leaned in, impressed. Grandpa Henry clapped his hands together and boomed, "That's my grandson." From where I sat, the kids' table felt like a different planet. Brandon was stacking deviled eggs into a tower. Lucy was whispering to her cousin Emma about trading chocolate bunnies. A jelly bean smacked me in the chest, followed by Brandon's mischievous grin. "Sorry, Ethan," he giggled. I forced a laugh. "It's fine. Just try not to hit me again, all right?" Across the room, Noah's voice carried. "Man, if I'd known Dad and Mom were going all out like this, I would have invited a client. They'd be impressed by this spread." Something twisted in my chest. They weren't going all out. I was. But in their eyes, I was still the little brother who hadn't grown up. Claire chimed in. "This is the nicest Easter we've had in years." "Thanks to your father," Mom said, smiling proudly at Dad. The words hit me harder than I expected. Dad just nodded, letting the compliment land like he'd earned it. I speared a piece of ham off my plate, chewing slowly, fighting the urge to say something. The kids around me didn't notice. To them, I was just the big cousin babysitting while the real adults handled grown-up talk. Noah leaned forward again, raising his glass. "Here's to family, huh? To Dad for keeping us all together, and to Mom for making this place look incredible." Everyone toasted. Glasses clinked. And me? I raised my plastic cup of apple juice with the kids, swallowing down a lump in my throat. Grandpa Henry glanced over at me, his eyes sharp in a way that made me wonder if he knew more than he let on. He didn't say anything, though. He just gave me a small nod before turning back to Noah's stories. The worst moment came halfway through dinner, when Noah decided to turn me into the punchline. "Hey, Ethan," he called out across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. "How's the kids' table? Treating you? You finally found your people?" The adult table erupted in laughter. Mom chuckled behind her hand. Even Claire giggled, though she looked a little guilty afterward. I forced a smile. They're great company. Inside, though, I was boiling. I wasn't angry about the joke itself. I was used to those. What stung was the timing, the audacity of it. While I sat there knowing I'd written the check that made sure Noah had a glass of wine to toast with in the first place. I looked around at the kids, still oblivious to the sting of the joke. Lucy tugged on my sleeve again, handing me her roll. "Can you butter this for me?" I buttered it quietly, nodding to her. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about seating arrangements, it was about respect, about being seen, about being acknowledged as more than the youngest, more than the quiet one. They could laugh, they could dismiss me, but the truth had a way of surfacing. And I didn't have to say a word, because I knew what was coming. The bill, the quiet little envelope that would land on that adult table like a grenade. And when it did, all their laughter, all their assumptions, all their dismissals would look very different. So I sat back, smiled politely, and let them keep laughing. What they didn't know was that the lesson was already on its way, signed, sealed, and waiting for dessert. By the time dessert came out, I had almost convinced myself the night would just slip by quietly. Plates of carrot cake and lemon meringue pie floated around the room. Kids were high on sugar, and the adults were still deep in conversation about Noah's career and Claire's grad school plans. I thought maybe I'd just let it go, another holiday where I faded into the background. But then it happened. A young server in a crisp white shirt stepped up to the adult table, holding a slim envelope. She bent down discreetly and placed it near my mom's elbow, whispering something I couldn't hear. Mom looked at it curiously, then opened it without much thought. I watched as her eyes widened. Her smile faltered. She pressed her lips together, glancing at my dad. "Thomas," she murmured, sliding the paper toward him. Dad set down his fork, picked it up, and squinted at the bill. I could almost see the calculation happening in his head, the sheer size of the number catching him off guard. His brow furrowed, and for the first time all night he didn't look like the man in charge. "Noah?" Dad asked, clearing his throat. "You didn't?" Noah looked up mid-bite of pie, confused. "Didn't what?" "The hall, the catering," Dad said, holding the bill up slightly. Who handled this?" Noah laughed, shaking his head. "Not me. I thought you did." Mom frowned. "No, we didn't. We assumed." Her voice trailed off as she looked from Dad to Noah to Claire. Claire raised her hands. "Don't look at me. I'm still living off student loans." A ripple of silence spread across the adult table. The confident laughter, the loud conversation, all of it dimmed into awkward glances and tight smiles. From my corner seat I sipped my coffee from a paper cup, pretending not to notice, but inside my chest was pounding. This was it, the moment I had known would come. The kids around me didn't even register the shift in the air. Brandon was trying to balance a spoon on his nose. Lucy was licking the frosting off her pie instead of eating it. But I sat there still, my ears tuned to every nervous word at the main table. Dad leaned toward Mom, whispering, but his voice carried enough for me to catch. 4,800. "Margaret, this can't be right. Are you sure?" Mom nodded stiffly, her face pale. Noah leaned forward, finally sensing the gravity. "Wait, seriously? You didn't pay? Then who did? Because this isn't pocket change." Shh. That was the question, the one I had been waiting for. Every instinct in me wanted to raise my hand, to clear my throat and say, "I did." I took care of it, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands together, and kept my face calm. I wanted them to feel it. The uncertainty, the weight of not knowing, the sudden realization that the person they had overlooked all night might just be the one responsible. The server returned quietly, perhaps sensing the tension, and said softly to my mother, "It's been signed for already." Mom blinked. "Signed for? By who?" The server pointed toward the kids' table, toward me, and in that moment every head at the adult table turned. Noah's smirk disappeared. Claire's eyes widened. Dad's jaw tightened. Mom froze, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Even Grandpa Henry leaned forward, eyebrows raised in surprise, though I swore I saw the faintest grin tugging at his lips. But I didn't move. I didn't gloat. I didn't say a word. Instead, I lifted my fork, took another bite of pie, and asked Lucy, "So, is this the best frosting you've ever had?" She nodded enthusiastically, oblivious to the tension simmering behind us. The best. That was my choice. Silence. Letting the truth speak louder than anything I could have said. And in that silence, my family finally began to see me. Not as the youngest, not as the background character, but as the man who had quietly done what none of them expected. The air inside the hall felt heavy. For the first time all night, the adult table wasn't laughing, wasn't buzzing with stories, wasn't even eating. They were frozen, staring at me like I had suddenly grown two heads. The only sound was the scrape of Brandon's chair as he climbed onto it to announce proudly, "I ate 6 peeps." Nobody laughed, not this time. I lifted my coffee cup, took a calm sip, and set it back down, pretending I hadn't noticed the silence pressing in on me. Inside, though, my heart pounded like a drum. Dad was the first to break. He leaned forward, voice low but sharp. "Ethan, did you pay for all this?" I met his eyes, steady. "Yes." The word dropped like a stone into water. Ripples of shock spread across their faces. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Ethan, honey, why? Why didn't you say something?" Noah laughed, but it wasn't the confident, booming laugh he always used. It was nervous, thin. Wait. You? You covered this? All of it?" I nodded once. "All of it." Noah shook his head, incredulous. "But why would you do that? You don't—" He stopped, realizing too late that the sentence he was about to finish would have revealed exactly what he thought of me. "You don't make enough. You don't have the means. You don't matter enough." Instead, he shoved another forkful of pie into his mouth, chewing hard to cover his embarrassment. Claire, bless her, was the only one who looked genuinely impressed. "Ethan, that's incredible. I didn't know you had that kind of money saved up." I shrugged. "I've been careful, saved for a while, thought it would be nice to give everyone something special." The words hung there, simple and unadorned, while my family squirmed in the weight of them. Mom's voice cracked as she whispered, "We sat you at the kids' table." Her shame was thick in the air. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The image spoke for itself. Me, surrounded by children, cutting Lucy's ham and buttering her roll, while the very adults who dismissed me toasted each other over a feast I had paid for. Grandpa Henry suddenly chuckled, the sound breaking through the tension like a hammer. Everyone turned to him, startled. He leaned back in his chair, eyes twinkling with something between amusement and pride. "Well," he said, his voice carrying across the hall, "seems the kid's more of a man than anyone gave him credit for." His words hit harder than any lecture. My dad looked down at his plate. Noah stared at his glass. Mom blinked fast, fighting tears. For once, nobody had a snappy comeback. The kids, oblivious as always, giggled when Lucy shouted, "Does that mean Ethan gets to sit at the big table now?" Everyone glanced at me, waiting. This was the moment I could have taken a victory lap, demanded respect, rubbed their noses in the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled at Lucy. "Nah," I said gently. "I think I'm good here." I turned back to the kids, helping Brandon peel the wrapper off his chocolate bunny while the adults sat in silence, chewing on something far heavier than food. That choice, the refusal to gloat, the refusal to shift tables, was my real victory. Because in that moment I didn't need their approval. They had already given it to me without a word, in their stunned silence and guilty expressions. Noah, for once, didn't have a joke. He looked at me, opened his mouth, then closed it again. The swagger, the smirk, gone. Mom finally reached across the table, her voice soft. "Ethan, I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem big enough." I gave a small smile. "You don't have to say anything." The truth was, I hadn't done it for thanks. I hadn't even done it for recognition. I did it because family matters to me, even when they don't always see me for who I am. And now, for the first time, they finally did. The rest of dinner moved differently after that moment. The laughter at the adult table didn't return right away. Conversations dropped to a murmur, hesitant and awkward, as if everyone was suddenly aware of a crack in the family foundation they hadn't noticed before. I kept my place at the kids' table, cutting brownies into smaller squares and handing them out like nothing had changed. The little ones didn't care about bills or lessons or respect. They just wanted more sugar. And honestly, sitting there with them felt right. For once, I wasn't desperate to prove myself. I had already done that, without saying a word. Still, the silence from the other table was thick. When dessert plates were cleared and people started standing, Mom made her way over to me. She crouched slightly, lowering her voice so the kids wouldn't overhear. Her eyes were glossy, her hands fidgeting with the hem of her pastel sweater. "I'm sorry, Ethan," she whispered. I never should have sat you at that table. I didn't mean to treat you like a child. I gave her a small smile. It's all right, Mom. I'm used to it. That broke her. Her hand shot to her chest, guilt flashing across her face. No, don't say that. You've always been so good, so quiet, so easy. I didn't realize how much we take that for granted. I didn't answer right away. I just met her eyes and let her sit with the truth of it. Sometimes silence says more than any words can. Behind her, Dad approached slowly, his jaw tight, his steps deliberate. He wasn't a man who apologized easily. In fact, I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard him admit he was wrong. He stopped a foot away, arms crossed, and cleared his throat. You should have told us, he said, voice steady but softer than usual. I didn't realize you could do something like this. I know, I said. That's kind of the point. His eyes flicked to the kids' table, then back to me. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he gave the smallest nod, like an unspoken acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, he had misjudged me. Claire came next, sliding into the chair beside me. She leaned in, her voice filled with something between admiration and regret. Ethan, that was amazing. Seriously. I don't think anyone saw it coming, but I'm sorry too. I should have stood up for you when Noah joked earlier. I shrugged. It's fine, it's who he is. But she shook her head. Number. It's who we let him be. Her words hung heavy in the air. Noah, for once, didn't rush to defend himself. He stood off to the side, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. The ever-confident, ever-smirking older brother looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Eventually, he muttered, "Guess I owe you one." It wasn't much, but coming from him, it was almost an apology. The last to approach was Grandpa Henry. He didn't say sorry, and he didn't need to. He just clapped a weathered hand on my shoulder, squeezed, and said, "Told you all along, this kid's got more sense than the rest of us combined." Then he walked away, leaving me with a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt all night. When everyone finally packed up to leave, Mom gave me a longer hug than usual. Dad shook my hand like he was meeting me for the first time. Claire kissed my cheek, and even Noah gave me a quiet pat on the back. It wasn't a grand transformation, but it was a start, a shift. Later that night, when the hall was empty and I stood in the quiet aftermath of the celebration, I looked around at the tables, the decorations, the crumbs of a day well spent. And I realized something important. I hadn't paid for Easter to earn their approval. I hadn't done it to prove a point. I had done it because I loved my family, even when they didn't see me clearly. The lesson wasn't just for them, it was for me, too. Respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, often in silence, often without anyone watching. And when it finally arrives, it doesn't come in cheers or applause. It comes in the quiet moments. In the way a father nods differently. In the way a mother lingers when she says goodbye. In the way a brother, who never admits weakness, mutters a half apology under his breath. I didn't need a seat at the adult table to know my worth. That night proved it. And while I'll never forget the sting of being dismissed, I'll also never forget the look on their faces when they realize the truth. Sometimes the strongest statement you can make is saying nothing at all. And that's it. That was my Easter at the kids' table. A day that started with me feeling invisible, but ended with my family seeing me in a way they never had before. If there's one thing I took away from that night, it's this. You don't have to shout to be heard. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. Respect doesn't always come when you demand it. It comes when you quietly prove who you are. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by your family, or had a moment where you finally earned their respect? Drop your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'd love to hear yours. If you found this story meaningful, make sure to like this video so more people can see it. Share it with a friend or family member who might need to hear it. And if you enjoy stories like this, real, personal, and sometimes a little raw, then subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for spending this time with me today. Until next time, remember, your voice matters, even in silence.